There is a new tricky exploit in Windows that hackers are actively using that you need to be aware of. It involves Windows shortcut files, and yes, shortcuts are actually files if you didn't know already. And they can be pretty easily leveraged for malicious purposes because they can run basically any kind of command. It just goes into the target box. But beware, because even if you already knew that, this exploit could still get you. In a report by Trend Micro, they talk about these malicious shortcuts they found that use this exploit to effectively make it impossible to see the actual true command in the target box. And hold on, because I know some of you are thinking, well, that's not very tricky. All they're doing is adding a bunch of spaces, so you have to scroll over to see the command, right? But actually, no, that is only half the trick. The really tricky part of these malicious shortcuts is even if you were to do Control A and select all the text in the box, including that which isn't immediately visible, and then paste it into Notepad, for example, that would not actually include the full command being run by the shortcut. Because the way the properties window works is in the target box, there's a limit to how many characters it will display in the command, even if there's more to it. So if I use this tool, for example, to analyze shortcuts called LECMD, you can see that behind the scenes, there are a bunch of these spaces, and then after the spaces, even more text that is part of the command too. Meaning, for example, if you thought you were being extra careful and looked at all the text in the text box, you might have thought, oh, well, it only runs OpenSSH. And maybe you'd think that it was weird that it has all these spaces, but it could be a bug. But in actuality, the rest of the command is outside the spaces. So it would end up running this command with the exe, which then runs this obfuscated PowerShell command. And if you're wondering how this PowerShell thing works, it basically tells PowerShell to take the left string, then the vertical bar is the pipe operator, which tells it to apply the command on the right to the string on the left, and command string lets you rearrange characters in a few ways, and then anyway, the final result is this command, which uses the mshta utility in Windows. It comes with Windows, but it's often used by malware to pull and run scripts from the internet. In this case, it's an IP address. I was able to test out and replicate this technique for adding the spaces. I just used a Windows shell command instead of putting the text in the target box. In my case, it's just a path to Notepad, and then I put 300 spaces, and then the name of a text file to open. So when you look at the shortcut, indeed, at the end, you can't see the part about the text file. It's just spaces. And if you copy the contents of the box and paste it, you only see the Notepad part. But if you run the shortcut, you can see that it obviously included the mention of that specific text file name because it asks to open it. I downloaded several different samples of malicious shortcut links within a virtual machine, of course, and I didn't even try to run them within it, but we can look at them. And they all use various techniques because if you can get the user to click a shortcut, then at that point you can basically run any command you want, so they can get creative. Unfortunately, Trend Micro said that when they tried to report this to Microsoft, they declined to address it in a security patch, which I think is not the right move. I mean, if it was just a matter of adding spaces and making it not immediately visible to see the command, you had to scroll over to see it, that'd be one thing. But the fact that it makes it impossible to see the full command, even if you try to select all the text in the box, I think that is a true exploit, and I really think they should fix it. Now, malicious shortcuts can be tricky in other ways too, though. For example, you can customize the icon to be whatever you want. So a couple of these examples, they've replaced it with a PDF icon. Also, like I said, since the .lnk file extension is always hidden, then hackers can just put on whatever fake extension they want, and it'll really look like it has that. So if they didn't notice or know what that little arrow icon meant, then they might think it's an actual type of that file. You might also notice that some of these malicious shortcuts have text in this comment box, and that's because whatever in the comment box actually shows up as a tooltip when you hover over that file. So they can make it look even more like a text document by putting what would normally show up in that type of file they're pretending to be. So there's a lot you need to be aware of. In the Trend Micro article, they also mentioned they found some malicious shortcuts that were able to use Newlines instead of spaces. So it was able to hide it and make it more look like legit where it would be on the left side. And while I could replicate it by putting 300 Newline characters instead of just spaces, I couldn't get the command to work, so certain commands might be more picky about having those in there. In any case, this is just all more proof that you need to be extremely careful when downloading any type of file from untrusted sources. I want to point out that in a lot of these malicious shortcuts, they go and download a file with a seemingly innocuous file extension, such as .text or even .mp4. But despite these extensions, these are actually scripts or executables. And then they just use that mshta command to fetch and run it, and that command doesn't care what the extension is, it just interprets it as a script either way. So if you ever see a command that you're being told to run and it's a web address and it talks about an extension that seems harmless, well, don't assume that it is safe. As a side note, I'll point out more about that mshta command. It seems that recently hackers have been figuring out they can just get people to run commands themselves by putting it into the run box. There's websites that trick you to do that in whatever excuse. They often do use the same mshta command that you saw in some of these shortcuts, but sometimes they are able to obfuscate it and make it not obvious what you just pasted into the run box. I did mention that in a previous video, but needless to say, if any website ever tells you to open the run box in Windows to run a command or paste anything into it, do not do that. Overall, the general advice still applies, where if you're just really suspicious about whatever you download from any untrusted source, be super suspicious, you'll be a lot better off. So if you enjoyed the video, you know what to do. Give it a big giant thumbs up and let me know down in the comments what you would have done if you had seen this. Would you have fallen for it? If you want to keep watching, next up I'd recommend a video where I talked about new scams this year, and it includes where I mention the runbox command in Windows. So I'll put that link right there you can click on. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.